It's time for school days. Hope for moms and dads of school-aged kids.
I tell parents, you're like a training wheel on a bike. Your job isn't to make the bike move. Your job is to keep the bike upright.
Those of us who are the true educators, we really want to be given the opportunity to educate the whole child.
We can get free college degrees based on all of the opportunities that are out here and available to our students.
Oftentimes, as parents, I think we want to protect our kids, but I think one of the greatest gifts we can give them is allow them to experience adversity.
Here's your host, Danita Bailey.
Well, good morning. Welcome to School Days, Help for Moms and Dads of School-Aged Kids. I'm Danita Bailey.
And I'm David Bailey. Babe, if I'm going to be sitting here for a little while, I think I need to get my name back in the introduction because, you keep saying Danita Bailey, but I think it's time to put me back in. Anyway, I'm like, hi, everybody. Good morning.
Let's not start the show with a fight.
I'm just saying. Okay. So, hello, everyone. Hello, all. I'm David Bailey.
All right, we digress. Today we're talking all about COVID-19 and the upcoming school year. As with all information or most information about COVID-19, what we say here might be obsolete before the end of the show. School will be soon in session. How soon is still to be determined from some districts as cases of COVID-19 continue to rise in some areas of our country. School officials have made plans A, B, C, and possibly D or further to prepare for the school year because of the ever-changing news about COVID-19, and parents are struggling to make the right decision for their kids for the fall. I think it's fair to say that we all have COVID-19 fatigue. So, David, how are you as a teacher feeling about the upcoming school year?
Well, I mean, from a personal academic standpoint, I feel good. I've been in the virtual space for several years now. And so back in March when we made the transition, I was already, my kids, we just kept on going. It was no big deal. Heading back to the fall, I'm going to be recording all of my videos for at least for the first unit for both my algebra and geometry classes starting now. So that whether we go back to campus or not, my kids, we're going to, they'll be able to have access to everything they need. And then if we do meet physically, then we can kind of go deeper into it and explore things. So from a personal standpoint, I'm feeling good. Now, if you see me in class, I'll probably have on a hazmat suit with a mask and the face shield.
You're going to look like an astronaut?
Pretty much. I'm gonna get potent stuff. I'm trying to get, I want to get hand sanitizer that squirts automatically so that the kids aren't touching surfaces. So it's gonna be like Fort Knox up in my classroom. But I teach middle schoolers, and so it's kind of hard to kind of wade through. They like to hug and do what they do, and so how do you manage that? And so in hallways and things like that. So but that's not my responsibilities. So, but we have great insight today as to kind of how that's all going to look. As a parent, I am, we're deciding to do the in-home option as well because we have immunocompromised members of our family, and so what's best for us is for them to stay home. So it's I'm feeling optimistic.
Tense, it sounds like.
Say it again?
I said tense. You sound tense.
Oh, well, I'm optimistic about, preparing, but even with all the preparation, you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So we just have to adjust and, kind of go with the flow.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of been 2020. Go with the flow.
Yes. Because
stuff keeps coming. Well, yeah, it was, kind of a no-brainer for us to decide to do online because, we've got one of our sons with asthma and I've got asthma. And so we did not feel comfortable sending our kids into the school system. And we, just hope that you are protected as much as possible as well. That makes me a little bit nervous being the wife of a teacher and you're going to be going in there regularly. But, we're just trusting God and you're a teacher. So
right.
You're going to be a frontline worker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other comments?
No, I mean, let's. I don't have much more to say. I want to get to the experts here because they
Yeah.
have it all. They have it all figured out, and so, and so we're gonna.
I think, yeah, they're laughing hysterically, all of
Yes,
them.
yes. So we're gonna
One's
hear
crying.
exactly what to do, and what they say is exactly the way it's gonna be. So no, I'm just
Right,
playing.
and it will not change. Right.
Yes, yes. But we are grateful for you guys being here because we want to um, hear from what's going through your heads. We want to hear from campus leadership from all different facets of where you guys are and what you're thinking. And so we're excited to have you guys here today.
Right. So, before we go any further, well, let me just say that it does take a village. If you hear a great parenting tip or nugget of advice, share it with your parent friends. Facebook it, Instagram it, tweet it, link it in, and add the hashtag School Days Show and hashtag I Am School Days. And also, we want you to be a part of the show. So if you have any questions or comments, give us a call at 214-444-5575. Or if you're live with us on Facebook, you can drop us a question there and we'll do our very best to get to you. I do want to say that we would like these comments to be as broad and general as possible because we do have people that are listening across the Metroplex, across the country, across the world, and they are not so much concerned about the fact that you didn't turn in your athletics physical and you want to know from Uplift Education if that's okay. So let's keep it broad where all parents will benefit from the information that we're going to share. So let's just jump right in and introduce our guests. David, do you want to start?
I sure would. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sean Scott. Could you raise your hand, sir? All right. He's entering his 21st year of service in Texas schools. He served as a U.S. history and government teacher and head baseball coach for the first 4 years of his career, and then moved into administrative roles, including positions as assistant principal, principal at the elementary, middle, and high school levels, director, assistant superintendent, and associate superintendent. Dr. Scott joined the Mansfield Independent School District in July of 2011 as the founding principal of Lake Ridge High School. During his time in Mansfield ISD, Dr. Scott has been promoted first to Director of Business Services, Assistant Superintendent of Technology and Information Services, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction. He is entering his third year as Associate Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction and Accountability. And Dr. Scott earned his Bachelor of Arts degree and Master's of Education and Master's of Business Administration and Doctorate of Education Education Leadership from Texas Christian University. Dr. Scott served as an active member of the Mansfield ISD community and is the proud parents. He and his wife, Courtney, are the proud parents of Emma, an 8th grader, Abigail, a 5th grader, and Jack, a kindergartner. Dr. Scott and his family reside in the Mansfield district. And we have Dr. Kimberly Canty. Dr. Canty, could you raise your hand for us, please? Well, you're only female on here, so I guess it's kind of hard. It's kind of easy to point you out. She's entering her 27th year of service in public school education with 21 years of service to Mansfield ISD. And she has held teaching and coaching positions in various administrative roles and was most recently MISD's deputy superintendent before becoming the second female superintendent in the district's history in December of 2019. All right now. And Dr. Cantu is passionate about preparing students to be college, career, and military and life ready through her work with Vision 2030 and the National Redefining Ready cohort. Furthermore, her work on preparing all students to be socially and emotionally astute and cared for both in and outside the school not only supports her belief that having students be life ready, but shows her desire to put the best interests of our students and families first. The Texas native also believes in giving back to the community and is an active member of the Mansfield Rotary Club and participates in Meals on Wheels, Habitat for Humanity, and other service projects. So thank you guys for being here and welcome back, Dr. Cantu.
You can unmute yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to introduce Gibran Torres. He was in the Army serving in Iraq with Task Force Odin, one of the first UAV units in the Army. Also served with 3 Corps G3 Air, which oversees all air assets on Fort Hood, Fort Bliss, and Fort Sill. He was then assigned to Joint Task Force Bravo, based out of Honduras, that conducted counter-narco-terrorism and humanitarian operations in Central America. After the Army, Mr. Torres worked with a general contractor firm in Irving, Texas, while attending Tarrant County College. One of his projects was with Uplift Education, a public charter school serving over 20,000 students in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, where he started in 2012. Mr. Torres now oversees the maintenance and operations of all 21 campuses and gives design input on new construction projects. He is also in charge of all network-wide centralized maintenance service contracts, including janitorial, as well as setting the janitorial and cleanliness standards for the entire network. Very important right now and always. Mr. Torres has a wife who will be a middle school teacher in Greenville ISD this upcoming year. His wife and 3-year-old son moved to the far side of Royce City about a year ago to enjoy the country life. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody just unmute yourselves right now. We're good. Originally, and then we want to introduce Leon Darden. He's originally from Waco, Texas, and brings over 15 years of educational experience serving students from low socioeconomic backgrounds. He believes that every child deserves an education that matches their limitless potential, not the condition of their neighborhood. Darden began his career as an educator in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, with experiences ranging from juvenile justice charter to several school districts in the area. Prior to receiving his master's degree in education administration, Darden also enjoyed success as a middle school football and track coach for much of his classroom career, helping to develop well-rounded student athletes. Recently, Darden was principal at Chilton Secondary School, where they received 7 academic distinctions in 2 years. Also, while in Chilton, Darden was appointed as a member of the McClendon Community College Alternative Teacher Certification Advisory Board. Immediately prior to joining DeSoto ISD, Darden was principal at a local charter elementary, rounding out his administrative experience at all grade levels. Darden, a resident of DeSoto, is a graduate of Baylor University with a BA in Public Relations and Concordia University, Austin, where he was inducted into the Pi Lambda Theta Honor Society. Darden is currently a doctoral student at the Dallas Baptist University. He is expected to complete his studies in 2023. So welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So now that we are all well acquainted, let's go ahead and jump right in. We have a lot of ground to cover and not a lot of time. So the first thing we'd like to know is many are pushing to send students back to school in person. What are your opinions about what the rush is to return back to school?
I can start with that one if you'd like. I think staying out of the political piece, I think, I think there's many reasons why there's a rush for parents to get their kids back to school. I know from the educator side, we do know that the majority of kids learn better in face-to-face instruction because of that ability to really engage as much as you possibly can when you're face-to-face. I think part of that push comes too for the concern of the social and emotional well-being of kiddos. And you guys are we're hearing all the stories and the things that are going on related to that. And so making sure that we have kiddos in our buildings where we can watch them and really gauge their emotional and well-being, I think is super important. For a lot of our students, school is their safe place. It's where they get regular meals, where they have access daily to counselors, where they can be screened daily for health issues, all of those sorts of things. And so I think those are just a few of the things that I think are really kind of leading that push to we want students back in buildings, and we want to be able academically to keep them on track. And again, the more that you can keep them engaged, which happens better face to face, the more likely that they're going to stay on track with their learning and continue to grow in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to piggyback on what Dr. Cantu was saying. Absolutely. A social, emotional aspect of our kids is vital. We don't we're not all born with a silver spoon per se, and we know the conditions a lot of our students come to us with. And school is not only doesn't provide only food and those emotional connections, but they also provide a safe haven for a lot of our students. And in our district, however, one phrase comes to mind: disproportionately affecting Black and Brown. And with that being said, if that hadn't have been said, maybe we'd approach this differently. But that has been said, and so we're in a position where we largely have to follow the science and follow the data and listen to Dr. Redford, from the CDC, and Dr. Fauci from the National Institute of Infectious Diseases. We're just not in a position, based on that phrase alone, to just not think about that aspect of it. And so, we're in a unique position to everything that Dr. Cantu said, except without overly promoting at-home learning and providing an option for in-person learning. As a leader, obviously I have to lead my troops into the building and into the front lines. But at the same time, we have to make sure that our at-home learning, we engage virtually. And we really do engage, because that is our primary responsibility. And for those students to be in front of teachers is the best way, regardless of how fun we can make a virtual learning, how in-depth, how thorough we can. But there's nothing replaces being in front of that practitioner, that pedagogical expert in delivering that instruction. And so that's the conundrum that we find ourselves in today.
Right. Yeah, and we actually will be doing, Kimberly, you mentioned the social emotional aspect that's really difficult to teach and to practice in a virtual environment, of course. And we will be doing a show with someone who handles social emotional learning for DISD next month, and to talk about how this is handled in a virtual environment and how we can, capitalize on what we do have until we're able to get back into the schools.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So what should parents, gosh, this has been such a difficult decision to make for, so many reasons. And, I told you guys yesterday that I'm a part of a couple of, we live in Mansfield, and I'm on Facebook on a couple of Mansfield moms pages, and parents are really talking about just what are you guys doing, and how did you decide? So what should parents be considering when choosing between the different models that their districts are providing this school year?
I think most of us here, at least I know Dr. Cantu and I, and then from our conversations before, the Bailey family all have school-age children and are having to make this decision for ourselves as well. To Mr. Darden's point, first and foremost, it's the health and safety of your family. And, our online application piece closed last night, and we're looking at upwards of 40% of our families opting for the online version. So again, to Mr. Darden's point, the best instruction is when you can get in front of that practitioner, and you can. So our efforting is to make as much online school as possible, follow kind of the same instructional programming of what would happen if they were there in person, with set times for them to be in front of the teacher, receiving direct instruction, receiving small group instruction, without having a 6-year-old sitting in front of a computer for 6 hours. So we're trying to strike that balance and building our schedule. And for us, almost 36,000 students. Really, what you're talking about is building 2 parallel school systems when you look at the personnel. Right. So many of our parents have asked, why the deadline? When can we change? That type of. Well, we really are completely restructuring reworking the structure of our organization every time we make a switch, and we'll do that. But it's not just something. It's a you got to move that kill a little bit at a time. It's a big shift. It's not just something you can snap your finger and make happen if we want to do it well. All the studies show that face-to-face learning for the vast majority of kids works the best. So our kind of philosophy is, especially for our younger learners, to make that face-to-face, to make that online experience as close to face-to-face as we can, so that parents who do opt, whatever their reasons are, for an online version or a virtual version, that there's no negative effects on the student and their progression through the year. Because in the spring, learning kind of became the variable. Engagement had to be the constant, and learning was the invariable. We can't do that this year. The learning, the year's progress, the learning has to be the constant this year.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions online. You guys see that, or I want you guys to know that I am paying attention to this. And yes, this is live. Someone asked if this was live. It is definitely live. Oh goodness, that was a long question. I can't ask all of that. One of the questions was were children spoken to or asked about what they want? Did any of your districts talk to students, not just parents, about what they wanted? That's a very good question.
We sent a survey out to families, and when we disaggregated that, we did have some students that did respond to our survey. I don't know, Dr. Scott, do you recall the percentage?
I don't, but we did have a student specific survey for our older kiddos.
Oh, okay.
And I love the question. We also send out surveys, and I think that we want a kid perspective, but at the same time, our students don't. Well, I won't say that. I won't go there. I'll just say that we rely on the parent perspective more so during this, because they're, quite frankly, they're the parents. And at present, our chief of research and design, he kind of keeps us abreast of the surveys, and 80% of our parents in our community have chosen at-home learning. And so, as Dr. Scott alluded to, we have two parallel competing methods of instruction, two parallel schools, theologies, methodologies, so on and so forth. And so we have to make them, juxtapose them, and make sure that to the best of our ability, again, without them being directly in front of our teachers, make sure that our learning keeps abreast with where they need to be, where they should be, the level of engagement. And so as parents think of that decision, again, disproportionate. We have to follow the science here for our district, again, simply because that's what the science is saying. And so for a district like ours, our parents get to choose, and we have to structure our schools and our systems to where, we're following CDC guidelines to the best of our capabilities. And in terms of instruction, I think when we look at it, we're looking at COVID-19, and one thing that it does do is it gives us an opportunity to rethink the brick and mortar type of education. We get to be more flexible with our schedules than we've ever been able to be. For instance, as we meet as middle school teams and elementary teams, we're focusing on instead of from this time to this time every day, math, art, science, social, so on and so forth. But now let's begin with social emotional hour, because we have to think about the trauma that our kids are coming back to us with. All they've known for their lives is I go to school, and then all of a sudden that was uprooted from them. And so while we think of us as adults and how we feel about it, just imagine the trauma that our kids are going to report to us back with. And so, we have to incorporate in our virtual learning, which will be similar to if you come in person, because we have to, minimize the communication, so to speak. So our virtual system is what they'll be utilizing even on campus. And so, frequent brain breaks, recess will look different, genius hour, blended learning just took on a whole new meaning for COVID. And so, and then project-based learning, things of that nature that we're all focusing on. I know we are working on, but again, that brick and mortar, that change and how we're using COVID. And I think collectively as a system, we're using COVID to, reimagine and rethink what education should look like. regardless of how we were trained and what we know to be the benefit. We can just change this up to be really more student focused and student centered than we've ever been before. And so that's incumbent upon our teachers, our parents to weigh both options. And I'm in no way, if you have to do it, I understand. So I don't want to ever come off as an elitist or just say, you have to choose this. This is the best way. We will follow the science, but we understand we're serving demographics of people that have to send their kids to school. That is the best option. We live in capitalism and people have to work. And so we do understand that. And so again, we just want our babies to have the best education that mirrors what we do virtually, what we do in person, what we have known before COVID, but also, again, looking at this as an opportunity to reimagine education.
Right. Yeah.
As a side, just from a teacher standpoint, what I noticed when we switched over to a virtual, that some of my students who were they're my biggest clowns. I call them the clowns. The ones who just have to be give them some extra love in the classroom. What I noticed though was that some of the same students who had challenges in the classroom were killing it online. When we went virtual, first of all, they got to study on their own schedule. And typically what I saw was as the day progressed, the behavior got more and more challenging in my classrooms. But they got to go online when they wanted to. I give them flexibility. You could either just watch the videos and my own included videos that I created myself, and you could also come join me personally for what I call it the virtual experience. And some of those kids were faithful. I mean, they came to me all the time. And one girl in particular, she in class, my algebra class, she struggled, but she got online and she was my top student in that class for the entire 9 weeks. And so I think for some kids is going to be, and I think it's all teacher engagement is critical. How they teach, what they do with it. We were talking about the algebra parabolas and vertices and all those things connected to COVID-19. So I was trying to do some real world connections to make them see it's not just about the content, but no, this is real. This is how we apply it in real world applications. And they really got to see that understanding of it as well. But it is critical, how you deliver is going to key to that kid staying engaged. If the teacher is engaging, making it interesting, and making it so that the kids want to come back to your class, then it can be a great experience. But if not, and it's just passive learning, which we know as educators, that's never the goal. But how do we get to that point creatively in a virtual space in a way that maybe we haven't thought about before as well? And so there are definitely a lot of things to consider in professional development. I know Dr. Scott, that's your speed, that's your world, and as well Mr. Darden and Dr. Kenton, everyone. So how do we make sure that is engaging? But on the flip side, for those that are coming, so Mr. Torres, I want to ask you. So here you go. So kids are coming back to school, all bubbly and bright and ready to learn. However, it's gonna be a whole new world. So how will teachers? What is the plan for how teachers will be? Teachers and staff and students to be protected, because ultimately it's all in the execution, and this is where it falls on you to make sure that it's happening across the multiple campuses that Uplift has. So how does that look, and what have you been told as far as how that's executed?
So we've been trying to follow as much as possible the CDC guidelines, especially when it comes to social distancing and mask requirements. The TEA from even several months ago, as a matter of fact, had already told all the school districts in the state of Texas what type of PPE that we would be receiving. We're going to start receiving that for Uplift anyway here actually tomorrow, and some other school districts here in the area will also start receiving that PPE and hand sanitizer and things of that sort, and chemicals. For the classroom, it's going to look a lot different. So we're spreading out a lot of the furniture to try and maintain that social distancing as much as possible. But we're also looking at other spaces rather that are not traditionally used as classrooms, like cafeterias, gymnasiums. There was even a point, before our survey results came back, and we found that about half the parents wanted to do remote learning. We were even looking at adding portables or temporary buildings outside of the existing buildings, either in the parking lots or even taking up soccer fields to be able to accommodate that vast increase in space to accommodate our students that we were expecting to come just a few months ago. We're also, of course, providing all the PPE for teachers, whether that's reusable face masks or the disposable kind, because teachers are, I don't have to tell you, but it sometimes can get a little bit dirty, whether you're dealing with a student that, that maybe has an accident with the primary scholar, or
these kids are nasty too. I'm sorry.
So yeah, we have to make sure and take that into account. But we've also been trying to address the SEL, social and emotional learning. So as Dr. Cantu was talking about, that human interaction is very important, especially with primary school students. So we as well as other school districts in North Texas are looking into some type of clear covering that a student can still see the face interaction of the teacher, so they can get that nonverbal feedback.
I just thought of something just right now, but will water fountains be accessible or not? I just thought about that. What about if I'm thirsty? Can I go get water? What?
Absolutely not.
I know.
Oh, parents, listen up. No water. So bring
your water bottles.
A jug, yeah.
Water bottle.
It's something just as small as that. That's just an everyday. Can I go get some water? You give them a hall pass to go and they come back. Now there's no water. Mr. Torres, how does if you gotta go to the bathroom, you have to. How does that look? You have a child from one from one class and children from another class. Is there I don't know. I don't know what I'm asking.
So for water fountains, I know other school districts are doing the same thing, that they're retrofitting their water fountains to be those water refill stations. So we're purchasing 150 or so of those brand new water fountains to replace, and we're trying to get that knocked out. But so are other school districts, not only in North Texas but nationwide. So there's going to be a shortage. So we're trying to work around portable water coolers or something like that to have in the classroom to be able to provide water to the students. And I know for primary school students also, they have the lower grades also have their own classroom restroom that they can share, whether it's shared with one other classroom. And I see very common for pre-K, first graders, things like that. And we're just going to have to increase the frequency of cleaning of those bank restrooms, where if an entire class comes in and has to use the restroom all at once, we're going to have to clean it between the restroom uses.
Right.
Wow.
Well, we're even looking at things of adding partitions in between the hand washing sinks in the restroom as well.
Well, and that's a question that I have, and this is really going to come later in the show, but it's almost later in the show now. What happens when a child comes down with COVID symptoms in the middle of the day? And you asked David with the, water fountains, the children are not going to stay necessarily in all districts in the classroom the whole day. There's some districts that are saying that they can go to lunch. Some are saying that they're going to eat in their classroom. Some are going to say they can go to recess. So are they going to have to track where these children were? And, there will be, did this child go to the bathroom? Did this child go to the nurse, the library, all of those things to make sure that those places are cleaned and not touched by other students? How kind of is that going to work? Nobody wants to talk. Somebody, right.
Yeah. We'll let you Dr. Scott. You go first.
I'll go first? Okay.
Please don't answer the ones, guys. Just hold on. We'll get to you, okay?
I was going to say, that's supposed to be curriculum instruction, right? I can just tell you that David Wright, who's our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, and his team, which has the Director of Safety and Security, Director of Nursing, they've been walking with principals and talking about some of the things that were just mentioned before by Mr. Bailey about, how do they use the restroom? How do they go to lunch? How do they do this? They've been mapping all that out with groups of principals so that they have all the right brains and they're developing their plans kind of consistent to their footprint of their building. So we kind of have multiple campuses on the same footprint within our district. So they've been going through like that. As far as what happens to a student in the middle of the day, some of that is very specifically laid out by TEA. Like if you have a case, you have to have there's specific PPE that a nurse or a nurse's aide has to be isolated with that single kid. You have to have a room set up for that until the parent comes is able to come and get them. So some of that's laid out. Other pieces of it are kind of they developed a flow chart in our district of if this then that, if this then that. And that by no means is a finalized document, as guidelines from Tarrant County Health change, from TEA change, from the CDC change. That will be updated as we go. But exactly what you're talking about of where has this kid been, what may they have been in contact with, what because we have our scheduled deep cleaning, but what may need to be done right now. All those plans are developed, but are, I would say, being revised at this time and just gone over and over and over again.
And I would say for districts across the whole state, we're all developing these flow charts, these process maps. There might be some slight variance in the details just because of, the individualized districts, but we're all looking at each other's and communicating.
Right.
Cheating off of each other, whatever you want to call it, because we're all in this together and we're all facing the same thing. And so there's a lot of sharing of information and a lot of talking back and forth amongst districts as we are all trying to set up the best processes for our students.
Yeah, and somebody online just said, and this is the conundrum that we as parents have and as administrators, is how are we going to tell the difference between a sniffle that's a cold or allergies or flu, which we don't want anybody to get flu, but or any of those other things, but how are you going to know if a kid sneezes in the middle of class or has a coughing fit? Do they have COVID? Do they get sent home because they particularly have a deadly disease? Or I'm not saying I want an answer to that because that sounds like we don't know.
Well, I do.
Oh, you do?
Yes, we need answers.
So to piggyback off of Drs. Cantu and Scott, these are ongoing things, and the unknown variable. I think Mr. Bailey will like that. There's so many unknown variables right now, and the fact of the matter is, and this is just my opinion. There is no 100% guarantee, right? And we are going to do our best. We are all doing our best, and Dr. Harry Wong said it best. Still, we are looking at plans. I know people are looking at our plan. It's just the way to go, and sometimes we're waiting for someone to say, "Hey, I'm going to do this," But if ever there was a time where education is unified.
Yes.
And we're unified in thought because we all adore children and we all adore teachers. We go a step into administration. That's what you do to support these entities of a larger entity and organization. But when you think about what Mr. Torres has to do and our facilities people across the board, there was never a time that I can recall being a student or even since Horace Mann started this notion of education, that every component of the organization is linked together, but not just in our respective districts, but across the board. We are engrossed in a pandemic that affects us all. When someone asks me, how you doing today? Oh, I'm doing fine. I have my issues, but we all have them. So mine aren't more special than anybody else's. That means that's because we all have the same issue. And I can't imagine a time in education where that was the case. And so, but if I'm being quite frank, there is no one way to answer that. We can have all the PPEs in the world, and we will. The state has done a good job, and we'll get those. But I don't envy Mr. Torres. I'll tell you that. His job is vitally important, and people in similar positions across the state and across the country. We're just trying to figure out, and that's an important point. What is the sniffle? Why are you coughing? I look at my wife. When she coughs, hey, what are you doing? What is that? Just making sure. Sorry, I don't mean any harm, but we're taking our vitamin C left and right. But we have to deal with. We have to think about what if that happens, and so the hysteria that might come from that. And as we have these plans that say, hey, well, you got to stay there for the whole year, or you have to do that for 6 weeks. Can we really hold our parents to that if they, choose the in-school option and they get wind that somebody was sick, and all we have to do is have a kindergarten baby say someone got sick. But what does that mean? And so now there's hysteria and there's trauma, and as a campus leader, now I'm getting calls and emails, and I'm shooting them up the chain, but we're all trying to figure this out. And so again, we're waiting and we're looking at each other's plans, and there are a lot of brilliant educators devising these plans. Our brilliant superintendents across the state are meeting collectively, and we're just, we're all waiting. But again, that stuff is changing every day. And so, again, the unknown variables, Mr. Bailey, help us figure it out.
Well, we have
Go ahead, babe.
we have quite a few people online from MISD, and they are begging me to ask about Tarrant County. I will say that I asked the same thing before we got on the call, and I was told that there will be a noon conference call that they are waiting to get the official decision from the state. Is that correct, Dr. Cantu?
We're waiting to get the order from Tarrant County.
Okay.
And I can tell you, while we're sitting here, I just received an email, so I haven't had time. I mean, this is happening in real time right now. And so as soon as we're finished with the podcast, we'll review the document and see exactly what that means for us for Mansfield ISD.
Okay. Thank you. They've been begging. Please, 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 please have her answer.
Literally, it just came in just right now in my email.
So stay tuned. We will know soon.
Wow.
They may know more than us right this moment.
Right, exactly. Somebody tell us what's happening out there.
Tell us Texas.
I will tell you that we have every plan to communicate with our families today and with our staff today, but we need to sit down and look at it in detail and make sure that everything we communicate is accurate and is as written in what we just received.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. We have had a couple of questions about how IEPs and 504s and SPED students will be handled. We've got 3 different districts that are represented here, and it'll be different wherever you are. So they can only speak to what's happening at their district.
So I can briefly and kind of fairly easily answer that question. At a couple of different intervals during the year, our special education department, led by Lisa Shockley, has sent out notification to the parents, making themselves available to answer questions, and then as well as offering to, if need be, revisit their individual education plan, and if need be, do that through the ARD process. So we're going to do our best to provide the free and public education for most kids. They'll be able to do that through either setting. It does create a challenge in, every time you split kiddos up, you're looking at English learners, you're looking at gifted and talented, you're looking RTI, 504, special ed. So as you split the 2 groups up into online and in person, how are you moving staff or positioning staff to be able to serve all of those models? Now, for some of our kids with more profound needs, those are longer conversations that are best served on a one-on-one basis, and we'll have those one-on-one. Those we're reaching out to specifically to those families, but we're just now to the point where we have enough information, because, as you know, a lot of this changed over about 7-8 days ago. Kind of changed what our model was going to look like. Guidance from the state, and so we're beginning to reach out to those families and really look at what the best way to serve their kids. And there's a good chance that whatever's in that order from Tarrant County today is going to impact those services as well. But we will provide the services to the kids as are needed, because you don't change the kid to the services. You decide the need of the kid, and then you find out the way to deliver the services. That's the way the whole system is set up. So.
Okay. Another question that's coming in from online, and a question we also had, but Dave, I don't know about you. I'm kind of throwing my cue cards away here because we've got so many questions from online.
Let's go. Hey, let's dive in.
I wanted to know kind of this is such a new normal for all of us. I don't know if I can even call it normal, but so kind of walk me through what a day would look like. I'm going to drop my kid off at school, and what's that going to look like, and then what will it look like for the students as well?
So, I mean, maybe Mr. Darden's the best to answer this, but I would say for an in-person kiddo, aside from the social distancing and safety precautions, your day wouldn't look schedule-wise that much different than when everybody's there. The challenge is building the schedule of appropriate screen time and instructional delivery method for our online kids. That's the one that's giving us that we're putting most of our energy into.
Well, the reason why I asked that is because I had seen that there is going to be staggered drop-off times. So, normally we have all the kids kind of converging at school at the same time, which isn't safe during a pandemic. So how's that going to change, and what other changes will be happening at your schools?
Well, again, ongoing evolution of these processes. But the first thing that we'll do is we're checking temperatures, and students will have breakfast in the classroom, from an allotted time. Let's say school starts at 8, and from 8 to 8:30 is breakfast in the classroom. Obviously following social distancing. We have to measure our classrooms. This is what I'm doing today with our facilities director to see how many kids we're going to actually fit into classrooms, because the people who make these decisions apparently aren't educators. If they think you can social distance 28 kids in a classroom, yeah, sure. And then we transition again, as our model, we're doing social emotional learning first. And what does that look like? Are we going to use a program to help tap into that? Because again, we have to focus on the trauma first and foremost. But it also comes into how are we instructing? So then they have that virtual time. A teacher is going to present the lesson, whether you're at home or whether you're in school. And so you're tapped into your device. But again, we have to look at the data, and we know that that's not a great thing for kids to just be sitting there for long periods of time looking at a screen. And so, the teacher gives a direct instruction. And so that taps into how are we instructing? How are we making sure our kids get our lessons? And so, as opposed to, the knowledge base and the remember base of the Bloom's taxonomy, we have to switch, I think, to, the analyze and the creativity even more so than we've ever done it before. And so we're addressing the Maslow's hierarchy of needs first and foremost, and then we're transitioning into the project-based learning, the creativity piece of instruction, because again, our teachers never should have been sitting there talking for 30 to 45 minutes to students anyway, but now it is a concentrated effort to make certain that our kids are, they have a schedule, but it's not structured not brick and mortar like it used to be. So and such time, and then we do this. No, we need to take frequent brain breaks. Again, that genius hour that we're devising is, what do you care about? And now you can research what you care about and then create a project based off of that. And so that genius hour is a thing that really taps into what our kids care about right now. And so again, as we rethink and reimagine, that's the process. We have to, however we decide, whether we stagger them or not, the temperature check is first and foremost. They go to their classroom, eat for 30 minutes, then we get on virtually, that teacher led, and then we log off, or, we continue to work for X amount of time, and then we break to brain break, and then we get back on and maybe switch subjects. And then, there's another brain break, and then there's lunch. Then there's enrichment time. Still, we're still not getting away from enrichment because we know how much that matters. Then there's the enrichment time, and then there's lunch. Recess is not going to be the same because, it's just not right now.
What is that? Do you know what that means yet, or is that still being figured out as far as recess
means?
Mm-hmm.
I just know it's not what it's typically been known to be. Because again, when you're dealing with kids, what is social distancing to them?
It's not.
It's just not a thing. So we have to impress that upon them. But when we get them outside to play, well, kids are going to play. And, that's part of that emotional development, social emotional development. But how do we, how do we do that? And so, yes, that is still in the works. But then again, creating more enrichment hour and blocking off a lot of that time for intervention and kids who might need a little more time because, again, we're not structured. And as Mr. Bailey was saying, the babies who were, and I think that's across the board because I've had kids who, extra attention, they've done very, very well virtually, where they had issues within the classroom and in the school, but no such issues now, but they have grown academically. And so, that's where we are. But again, allotting that time for kids who, can't finish that in that 30 minutes and are not going to have someone at home to supervise their homework. And so embedding time within that schedule. And so it's going to be structured. It's not going to be rigid as we've known it to be, because again, there's opportunities here to be innovative, to look at school completely different. And then even post-COVID, prayerfully that's sooner rather than later. But again, the things that we're implementing now, we're going to continue. And I think that's across the board after this COVID is over, because we've had some great minds come together across the state. And we're stealing ideas, but I don't think that's just a COVID thing. I think it'll be present after COVID.
Yeah.
Because it's given us the opportunity to do it different.
Yeah. I know the plans are still being put together, but I'd love to know a little bit about the online models that you guys are planning. I've seen asynchronous and synchronous, and I'm not sure exactly what that means in this case. And then as well, what would the rigor be like? I noticed that the emergency distance learning, the rigor was not what I would have liked it to be for my students and where they were. And I know that, we were just trying to put something together and doing the best that we can with an impossible situation. But how has that changed with having the opportunity to plan for a couple months and really put together a strong system for online learning?
I'd like to let Dr. Scott, and but I have to say this before he launches into his detailed explanation. He and his team have spent a tremendous amount of time working and planning for this very, very thing. And so I just a shout out to him and to all the other curriculum and instruction departments and leaders across the state and wherever you may be listening, because that's been their charge and their challenge has been to develop these amazing online learning opportunities for our kids. And so I want to turn it over to him to let him share what's happening in Mansfield.
So this is gonna look a little bit different by the age of the child, by kind of the grade level that they're in for us, and we're still developing our final schedules. But I just want to say, you're not alone in your confusion over synchronous and asynchronous, and TA did not. They've done a lot to support us during this time, but they did not do anybody any favor when they linked the method of taking attendance for funding to the method of instruction. Those two things, funding and instructional methods, should never be in the same sentence, and they've made them inseparable. So really, when you hear that a district's doing an asynchronous plan, asynchronous means that Mr. Bailey was talking about recording videos for his kids. Well, those can be watched whenever. They don't have to be done when Mr. Bailey's recording them, making them by definition asynchronous. And so all districts, I would assume, will be filing an asynchronous plan of some sort for funding and attendance purposes. But they will all have components of synchronous instruction with them. There's no way to teach a first grader how to read without getting 3 or 4 first graders in front of that teacher, and so that she can hear how their blends are. She can hear how their phonetical sounds are going, and she can correct them. She can show them where they need to place their tongue so that they hear it as they say it correctly, and they associate it with what's on the page and the pictures that are there. All that's important. All that brain research doesn't change just because a kid is online now instead of sitting in front of the teacher. So for our elementary kids, they'll mainly be self-contained. They'll have one teacher, and there'll be designated blocks of 50, 40 minutes for each subject. That doesn't mean that a teacher, as Mr. Garden was saying, is going to be speaking to them for 40 minutes. There may be 10 minutes of whole group instruction, followed by her sometime with guided reading with the kiddo, with 3 or 4 kiddos. And in a normal classroom, those other kids would be at stations that reinforce those skills that they've been working on that day, or that maybe that particular kid needs to work on. All that stuff will continue to happen in a virtual environment. It's just we got to work out the logistics of exactly how that works for a kid. So for an elementary, for the core classes, they'll have those blocks of time. And then we're working on how we're going to deliver the PE, how we're going to deliver the music, the tech apps classes, that type of stuff. As you kind of get up into middle school, those kids have a schedule, and they'll follow those schedules. So all of our core classes in Mansfield will be taught face to face by a teacher. So you will have 7th grade English at this time for this period for this amount of time. And you'll know where to go if you're online. For some of your elective classes, it may look a little bit different. That may be a little bit more asynchronous, depending upon how we're able to, because our elective teachers will kind of have to live in both worlds. In Mansfield, we're trying not to make our algebra teacher teach online classes and in-person classes because the method of instruction is different. And so some smaller districts, may not have that luxury, but we're trying to stay away from that. From high school, it's going to be a heck of a mix. We have, for our EOC classes, we're going to try to deliver that direct instruction of you're in this class at this time with this Mansfield ISD teacher. We have a ton of kids take TCC courses, more than anywhere else, more than very large districts combined around us. And so those classes are being offered virtual by TCC. So those will look the same for our quote in-person kids or our virtual kids. And then we will have in-person options for our CTE and the electives. If football is allowed to go on, a student will be allowed to come for band or football if they choose to. And then finally, we will have some Edgenuity courses, which is an online platform for students to be able to take courses that'll be monitored by an MISD teacher that's certified in that area because it's original credit, but not all the instruction. So a social studies teacher who's a composite certification may monitor multiple social studies subjects for kids. Their class load may be a little bit bigger, but they won't be developing 2 to 3 preps a day as they normally would in person. So it's kind of a world of those trade-offs. Because what we want to do, if we don't take the time and figure that out, then what we have to do is reduce the offerings. we could do the schedule real quick. We could say everybody's taking these 8 classes at this time, and we're done. I hope you all like it. But that's not what we're doing. We're trying to maintain the offerings that make a comprehensive public school experience so appealing, because we have 35,000, almost 36,000 kids, and they all have they're all going very and want to go very different places in life, and it's our job to facilitate them being able to get there. So that's where the complication lies. I hope I kind of helped understand kind of where they would go during the day. But an elementary kid, just to assure parents, is not going to be on their screen from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. Exactly what Mr. Darden said. There are brain breaks. They're not listening to a teacher from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. in person. That's mixed in and out. We just got to figure out how to do that. We do need the kids available during that time so that we can get them in the right session with the right teacher or the right small group throughout the day. And when we publish that schedule, that'll give parents a little bit better idea of, if I need to go pick up lunch for my kid, when's the best time to do that? Because the schools will be providing it, or if I need to take this meeting, this is the best time that I know I'm not going to be helping my kid at this time. We'll have that. We just don't have all of that specificity today.
Mr. Darden, did you want to address what's kind of going to happen at DeSoto regarding online?
First, I want to commend Dr. Scott for his explanation. A lot of that is across the board. But I really want to reiterate the ridiculous notion of tying asynchronous and synchronous learning into funding. That is absolutely preposterous. It's absurd. And it's offensive for everything that we do. With that being said, in DeSoto, again, I'm going to focus on the positives of COVID. What it did for DeSoto was it brought about, a collective. The consortium of talent was brought together in a common cause abruptly. But then over the summer, and anyone who takes issue with what educators do or don't do, you're sadly mistaken. What is a vacation? I know some teachers, most of the teachers in our district didn't take any time off and principals either, for that matter, and central administration either, for that matter, for trying to perfect this system. And, when we're looking at thinking about our engagement, that's at the forefront of what we're doing here. And again, when we think about the facilities, again, it's almost August, and, we're just starting to look around and look at our facilities and measure them. And, some people might have done it sooner, but we're focusing on the instructional piece because we know that therein lies often the difference between success and failure. And so, again, on the elementary level, no one is looking at, a computer screen, or middle school with a computer screen. We're providing opportunities for kids to take a hold of their education. But how do we do that? We have to tap into their interests. We have to, make culturally responsive pedagogy. We're creating curriculum. We're redesigning curriculum because there's an opportunity to do so. And that's something that our superintendent, Dr. DeAndre Weaver, has tasked us with doing. And he's given us the free will. Of course, we operate in TEKS, which are our standards. And so everything that we do is predicated around the standards. And so when we talk about being culturally responsive, that goes across ethnicities. It's the culture that you serve. But it's exciting kids about education in school. In these unprecedented times, we're looking at what incites kids, what engages kids. And so, we're looking at that more than we ever have. And we're doing it as a collective. Teachers aren't isolated. When we think about asynchronous and synchronous, we're looking at the, for lack of a better term, the most talented teachers across the district to deliver that live instruction. and record that instruction. And then we're looking at teachers to facilitate that. And then there's also the availability. We fully understand that if our parents are working, and again, I will say this one more time is that, if there was ever a time that all stakeholders in the child's education have to be present for the success of their students, it's now.
Right.
Parent involvement and engagement is not a choice. And we do understand that a grandmother who might have to keep the kids, and this is not offense. I love grandmamas. Please don't slaughter me. I was raised by my grandmother, but one that might not be as technologically savvy and have to keep the parent, have to keep the child. That parent has to go to work and has to get off. Well, there's no way a kindergartner to allude to Dr. Scott's point again. If you're teaching the sounds, typically you're in front of that kid. So the parent has to be there to look at the lesson and then look at their student and say, oh, hey, well, sound this out. Are you making the correct sounds and enunciations? And, are you doing what was said? And so there's no way that the parent can always be there. And so, we're having those type of methods we're incorporating to make sure that all our kids from across the board, and I wouldn't want to get into Mr. Sean Joseph's, our high school principal's realm, but he's working diligently. There's 3,000 students in a high school. And so that's a district within itself. And so, but everybody is working diligently in DeSoto. But again, the kids are at the forefront, and that's not unique to DeSoto. Everybody is thinking about what's in the best interest of all stakeholders. But there's still works in progress, and we stay in constant communication, as Dr. Cantu said, that we have to, because we know our parents are thinking about what's going on. And, as things change, we have to keep parents abreast to what's happening. But I applaud all educators across the state, across this country. First and foremost, our teachers, they are phenomenal. The work that they're putting in across the board, we're just all trying to do what's in the best interest. Again, it's something that is unprecedented, but great minds are coming together. Again, we're stealing ideas left and right. I know I am. And there's just brilliance across the board, and that educational brilliance is shining through. And you see, regardless of, as my friend and colleague Michael Bland said, regardless of a national void in leadership, we are, as educators, we are a collective. We are banding together like never before because we have to. And so, again, I applaud everyone on this call and everyone who's listening, and educators everywhere. It's just a fantastic thing we're doing. I've always been impressed by educators, and I'm even more so now.
Mr. Darnan, I love that you said that, all stakeholders need to come together. And I know that there are a lot of parents listening right now, and I've spoken to some parents, and I've been one of those parents that's been overwhelmed with online learning. There's some parents that are considering this choice and still have, time to consider whether or not they're going to do that. Some of them work at home. Some of them don't understand the content that's being given to their students. And can't help them. Some of them have multiple students in different grade levels. I know we have one friend that has 6 kids that are school aged, and she dropped out. She said, we're done for the semester in the spring, and she decided to homeschool or whatever she did. So we are all in various levels of handling this. So what would you say to parents that are concerned about the online learning and just not knowing how we're going to handle it?
Are you asking me?
Anybody that wants to answer.
Breathe.
I love that.
We're in this together, and that's what I told my people, not just my teachers, but also my parents. Breathe. We're going to walk you through this, and at the end of the day, again, we're not. We're having plans, and we're doing what we feel is in the best interest of our students, but breathe. And at the end of the day, when all of this is history, prayerfully, again, sooner rather than later, we'll have accelerated learning. We'll have plans to pre-assess, post-assess, universal screeners. And we'll reinvent and reimagine even after this to make sure. And this data is going to have to be tracked for years to come. This is not a quick fix. We have to track every single student to, to identify gaps, alleviate them. And so, again, breathing is the best thing. But again, constant communication with our teachers, constant communication from administration. Don't give up. Don't drop out. I know how difficult that can be, especially when you're not here's what I tell my teachers and my staff. Don't let this time minimize what you do. Everyone can't just walk in the classroom and teach. That's why they trust us. That's why they drop their students off for us, and they trust us with their kids' learning. We understand the difficulty. So breathing and understanding is at the forefront of what we all need to do. Be patient with one another. If you have questions, just ask. Utilize decorum at all times. But we're going to figure this out together. Our superintendent last year, our motto was "Together we will." And as intelligent as he is, I don't think that he understood how profound that statement was going to end up being. And so together we will do this. We will accomplish what needs to be accomplished. We will maintain as best we can during this time. And then when there is opportunity and when this is over with, we'll have accelerated instruction. We'll have accelerated intervention. We'll identify where kids are. And again, I'm assuming that that's how it's going to be across the board. It's not a foolproof system. But again, we're doing the best we can in unprecedented times. And so just breathe and understand that we are in this together across the globe.
And all of us on the call are parents, so I would love to,
Yes.
just kind of hear from y'all's perspective as parents, what you're having to educate your children as well, although you are educators. But, David is an educator as well, and, we both were struggling this spring in helping our kids because we're not their normal teachers, and we're under different circumstances. We didn't choose to homeschool; we were forced to homeschool, and so it was difficult for us too. So, love to hear from you guys as parents and educators.
I can say for me, I have a daughter entering into 5th grade, and the spring was not easy for me as a parent either. My husband and I both work, and I am not. She was in 4th grade in the spring, and I was an English teacher. I have a couple of degrees in English, and so 4th grade math, man, it looks different than it used to look. So I leaned heavily on the experts from the classroom because we needed that help. But going back to what Mr. Darden said, breathe. But we had a former colleague too that Dr. Scott and I worked with, and the statement she always said was, I would say to parents, whatever you do right now is right. This is a situation we've never been in before, and so she used to tell us, whatever you do right now is right. And so we're all doing the best that we can. Our personal family situations, structures, all of that. There's 1,000 different varieties of that right now. Whatever you do is right. Lean into it. Lean into the teachers and the classroom experts. Ask questions, and we'll get through it. We'll get on the other side of it. We'll do assessments. We'll get kiddos exactly where they need to be, and we'll do as the educators, when we have all of our kiddos back in the building, we're going to do the very best job that we can do to take our kids where they are and get them where they need to be.
That brought tears to my eyes.
My
Whatever you do is right.
My baby girl is my heart.
Mm.
I am an elementary principal right now. She was in 3rd grade. God bless all teachers, but really bless 3rd grade teachers. There is something. I don't know what it is, but God bless her teachers because it's just different. And again, I don't ever want to. In my teaching experience is middle school. That's my niche. That's my forte. I love middle school. But elementary is not my thing. and definitely third grade is not my thing. And so when I tell people to breathe, I'm telling them to breathe because I've had to breathe. I'm not just telling you that. I'm telling you from experience. And again, that's my baby. Nothing I won't do for her. I just don't want to teach her. And so I'm going to, and so that's what, as a parent, again, I understand the frustration. That's not my forte. Like Dr. Cantor said, that's not, if you're English and now you're forced to teach math, well, here we are. And again, it has changed over the years. And I've had to tell my daughter, carry, what do you carry? That's how I learned it. And she's like, no, my teacher didn't say do that. I'm like, okay, well, I thought I know how to do it. All I can do is tell you how to do it. Is the answer right? Okay, the answer is right. Because my teachers were fantastic. That's why I'm here. And so, I think all parents are are feel the same, whether you're an educator or not. Parenting is parenting. And so shout out to all the parents who've had to adjust during this time.
And I'm going to put in a plug real quick for our episode about the new math. I believe that was a Mansfield ISD teacher as well. We did an episode about understanding the new math. So go back and look at that or listen to that on whatever podcast platform you want. It was very helpful.
Concrete sequential. I bet you heard that about 1,000 times. Concrete sequential to abstract.
There you go.
I do want to. I'm sorry. I have 3 children that I love so preciously. I had to go address that for a second, but I'm back. I will say that as a teacher, when all this hit back in the springtime, I intentionally gave my students a little bit less work. It killed me, especially being an algebra and geometry teacher at the most critical time of the year. We're going into all the slopes and quadratic form, all that other stuff. And the reason why, and for Dr. Scott, this something to, as you're working with the campuses and Mr. Darden and everyone as well is because I knew the other teachers were going to slam them with work. And that's exactly what happened. My babies, they said, Mr. Bailey, we're being killed. They are killing us. It felt like it was like double the work. Watch a whole lesson and then do an hour or 2 per day per assignment, but helping as an educator, because my kids were already used to it with me, so it was an easy transition. But I took a step back because then I saw, because none of the other teachers where I were at least weren't used to the virtual learning, and so it was like this overkill of content, and that leads to overwhelm, and kids saying, I'm just going to, I'm done, as well. And so is asking and helping to manage and balance the work. And if you have multiple kids, like we had 3 kids on at once, and I'm trying to, it's like revolving chairs, trying to, for my own kids, just trying to get them going. And we did a morning session for our kids, and then I taught in the afternoons, with my students, so we had to kind of juggle it out with that schedule with my wife. But just that what is critical, and for parents anywhere, is just to ask, the level of content, if it's virtually, that it is not going to be overwhelmed, because it can be a lot as well. And so that's just something to take into consideration as we're going forward. And I think about that now. I got to do maybe an entire year's instruction virtually. How does that look as well? So just from a teacher standpoint, and I'm sure there's parents that can attest to. Like it was sometimes it could be very, very high, just quantity of content, as well. So just
right. And I get.
Go ahead. Uh-oh, he's frozen. Uh-oh. What just happened? Whoa. Okay, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties with the Zoom call. Can everybody still hear me? Give me a yes, we can hear you. Looks like all my guests are frozen. This has never happened before. So tell me if you can hear me. Am I still live? Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay. It looks like I'm going to have to reboot this call here. So sorry. Things happen now. We usually have people just in our studio, and with technology,
reflected in the handbook.
uh-oh. Great. Hang on, guys. And it sounds like they were talking, too. Okay. Hopefully they will connect again. Yes, I'm still live. Okay.
Move the ball forward every year. You know, we've improved we've shown gains amongst all student groups in almost every single category from advanced academics to special ed every year.
Can I stop you guys for a second?
Uh-huh.
I apologize. So my computer, the Zoom call froze you guys. They could only hear me. So I hope you weren't saying anything brilliant there, Dr. Scott, because nobody.
It was
Dang
the most profound. It was the most profound statement that's been said on the entire show.
I don't think I can get it back either.
I know. I was about to say. I don't know if you can repeat that. It was a gem in the making. Did you hear me?
He was breaking it down. I mean, I was just holding my heart. Wow.
Yeah, they're laughing at us online too.
Oh,
okay, so rewind like 3 minutes. Because all they could, it was pretty much right after you started talking, Dr. Scott, all they could hear was me.
I think it's like the old thing about breaking the camera, huh? You know,
help him. So what did he say?
all I was saying was, Mr. Bailey had talked about balance and not overwhelming kids, and so I'd mentioned that we at the beginning of the year, beginning of the summer, we early on talked about changes to our grading guidelines and not reducing the rigor, but lessening the load a little bit, which in those grading guidelines will be in both online and in person. They'll be the same. But really we've got to refocus on the teaks, as Mr. Darden mentioned, are already a mile wide and an inch deep. And so we already have to work really hard at focusing those teaks on what our kids really need to know. And then, we only have like 3 district-wide assessments in each of our major subjects each year to kind of as meters to make sure our kids are knowing what we're doing and make sure that our curriculum is doing what it's supposed to do. So a moment ago, I was talking about we have a district-wide curriculum written by our teachers and our instructional coaches and coordinators. And our instructional coaches and coordinators and some teachers have been working all summer, and our teachers, we just had 900 teachers go through a voluntary training last week for online instruction. They've been making the adjustments and kind of metering that curriculum over what needs to be taught when, what instructional methods need to be different. That was, hey, Mr. Bailey, that's exactly
awesome.
What it looks like in my house.
He was trying to play it off. If you guys are just listening to the podcast, one of our middle child just peeped behind David and went to the bathroom. So
he had heard enough of me. He's like, I've already heard this a while ago. I heard it live.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. This is real talk. This is life. This is life.
Yeah.
I'm at home with 3 kids. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, but I would just say that. So we're doing all these. We're making these real steps to make things better. Okay, and I would just say that I would ask that our communities realize that we're going to make mistakes, but also realize that if you followed our progress over the last several years, you've seen for every student group from AP all the way down to our lowest learners, our curriculum works, our processes works, our continuous improvement processes works, and we are attacking this opportunity in the same way that we've attacked those other pieces of student achievement. So we may see a dip, but that doesn't mean that we failed. It means that we have a new baseline and that we're going to continue to work with them. And so I don't want to be here in 5 years, but if we were here in 5 years, we'd be back where we would be so much better. We would make giant gains, and you see these plateaus and then you see these jumps, and that's just the way the change theory works. That's the way that learning works. You have to have past experiences, and then you build on those and you improve. So, in a weird sense, we walk out a lot of times and we look at each other and we're like, we go through these weird times of, man, we are jacked up and excited because we've had this new challenge, and then boy, just the tired hits you, and you're like, oh my gosh, CA changed something, and then you build back up, and so this is kind of re-energized a little bit to Mr. Carr's point, but we will get better at this, and we'll be better in the fall than we were in the spring. And if we're still here in the spring, we'll be better in the spring than we were in the fall. We're getting better. That's what we can do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I wanted to ask Mr. Torres real quick. Is there a comparable type of support community of people in comparable positions across districts, and how you guys are preparing and adjusting? And also, like, for example, I know in charter districts, it's carpools, but in public schools, it could be public transportation sometimes. It could also be the buses, as well. And so I'm just thinking about, how are you getting support you need to continue to do your critical task?
Well, actually, I'm really glad that Dr. Scott brought up how he got MISD got input from the teachers, because really that's been a resource for me as well. Is my customer is the teacher, whether you're in administration or you're a principal or a dean or assistant principal. We're all here really to support the teachers, and in turn, those teachers are going to educate our students and create a better society, a better world, in hopes of creating a better world. So my best resource has actually been talking to teachers who I've made either friends with here or as colleagues within, not only within my organization but also within other charter schools, to find out what their biggest challenges are that I can actually have some kind of an influence in. So yes, we do, well, at least within the charter school network. With other charter schools, a lot of times we use the same vendors, the same contractors, so we're kind of networking in that fashion. And then also with our providers and our equipment manufacturers, whether it's getting on some kind of purchasing cooperative and making sure that we have the supplies, across the North Texas area without hurting each other, like I was talking about earlier, or just getting, stealing ideas from each other. I kind of call it co-opetition. For charter schools, we may be in a DISD zone or a Grand Prairie ISD zone or a Fort Worth ISD zone, but we still talk with those, for the facilities anyway, we still talk with those, counterparts in those departments to make sure really we're benefiting the students that are, whether they attend our school or whether they attend a traditional school district. We're still kind of in the same boat together, and we're trying to get past all of this together. So it's been, kind of a coming together, more so than we have to try and cooperate.
Well,
Awesome.
We are bordering on being way too long on our show. This is usually an hour-long show, and we've already gone almost an hour and a half. So I really just have one more question for all of our guests. What have you learned from distance learning that will shape the way your schools operate in the future?
Well, that's such a good question. Go ahead.
Mine's pretty short. Really, just changing our buildings to accommodate that additional infrastructure, making our campuses basically build communities. I'm a strong believer in that schools do build communities, and not just making it for our students, but also for the community as in general. So that distance learning has become turned our campuses into distribution points, whether that we're distributing meals or we're distributing laptops. So being able to kind of change in that fashion.
All right.
I would say it's really kind of two things, but one, just the strength of educators, and whether that's the teacher in the classroom or the student nutrition worker or the people that were just hanging on, hoping, that, they were going to have a job. I think it's the strength of the educational community has just been incredible. And because of that strength, we've been able to really look at what education looks like as a whole. I think Mr. Darden referenced this earlier. You know, education's not going to look the same again ever going forward. And so part of what the spring has brought us and what we're going through right now is showing us the strength of teachers and educators and that we can do anything. And there are going to be some things that we'll be doing differently and we'll be doing better moving forward for kids.
So I would just, Mr. Darden talked about how we've reimagined things, and part of that is because we've had the opportunity. We talked earlier about attendance being coupled with the funding formula. There has been some ideas, and this is just something that we want to do in Mansfield that the state doesn't allow is, the university model which looks a lot like the hybrid model that we've talked about. Legislatively, you can't do that. You can't have students come just 2 or 3 days a week because the state won't fund the other days if they're not there. And we can't afford to hire full-time teachers for part-time funding for students. And so just legislatively, I'm hoping in January that our representatives give us some leeway for kids that aren't already in dire straits. So you have the flexible optional school day, but there's a very specific subset of kids who have either already dropped out or who are pregnant or have some other life challenges before that you can apply those pieces. We have parents of our elementary kids that would love to have them at home 2 or 3 days a week, and then kind of trust us to do the education side, and they do more of the faith and family side. So there are opportunities. This being shut down has kind of re-brought up some of those old things that we've thought about over the last 4 or 5 years that we were just flat told by every lawyer and every member of TEA or FASB that we asked that, they won't fund that. No matter what you do, they won't fund it. So it's exciting in that maybe this is sparked not only education circles, but those outside of education that if you want us to be creative, you have to allow us to have the funding to be creative. We can't be creative without personnel. And we're not asking necessarily for more. We're just asking to be able to fund the ones that we have. So that gives us, that gives me some hope at going into the legislative session in January.
All right.
I think that when we look back on this, and as everyone has alluded to already, it won't look the same, and we'll be better for it. The collective genius of educators across this state. I am MISD. I am AISD. I am every ISD. And so we are no longer separate because we know how small the world is, brought on by one pandemic. And then there's the other pandemic of the social aspect of things. And when I think of how we're going to evolve, I think of the equity issue, whether that's within districts or it's across the state. We have to reimagine, and we have. But access is the defining factor. I think that when we think of how disproportionate, again, hear that word again, that ugly word, disproportionate, it boils down to the inequity issue, the socioeconomic issue. And I think that as a collective, because we all have kids, we have affluent, we have those who are not, we have poverty. And I think that what these two pandemics, the one, the stain on our country, and the other, just brought on by a novel virus that occurred 100 years ago in a different form. We're going to work on this equity issue, and I don't think there's any conversations that we're afraid to have, whether it's legislative. And I think that more often we can come together again, as a collective, and realize that we're more alike than we are different. But the equity issue is a real issue. And if we're going to make sure that every child, every single child has the opportunity to capitalize on the common denominator, which is public education. And I think that, again, we'll have these conversations more often. We'll have the diverse perspectives. We'll have the differing perspectives. We'll meet collectively. Again, we'll have this consortium of just educational minds across the board. I can't unmeet Dr. Scott. I can't unmeet Dr. Cantu. I can't unmeet Mr. Torres. I can't unmeet the Bailey family. And trust you me, you'll hear from me. If I have questions, I will rely, and you'll receive an email. And as a doctoral student, I will be asking questions. I mean, when I meet good people, I like to rely on good people, especially when we're in the same profession and passion for children. So again, that won't change. Again, we're all been faced with the same thing, and so moving forward, again, as a collective, we'll move forward together.
Babe, I'm sorry. Let me just one last quick like this from a teacher standpoint. The word that kept coming to mind all since March for me is the word pivot. Is being able to pivot quickly and adjust, because if we try to hold on to the model, it's going to hinder us from seeing what could be. And there's great opportunity now for families and for educators and for districts to grow and imagine the possibilities of what could be. So I'm excited about some things now that I can do that I wasn't able necessarily to do in the same way when I was formally in the classroom as well. And so but also how can we meet the needs of those in the classroom? So, it's forcing me to stretch and grow, but also as an educator, how can I come alongside my educators, my teammates, my team? We're coming together with a plan with our math team of what we want to present to our principal as far as here's our plan as a math team. We're on a united front and how we're going to attack and making sure that every single scholar is, getting what they need across all the grade levels in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So teamwork and pivoting, but then also just exploring and growing together. And just another word is grace. Giving grace to each other, giving grace to your children, giving grace to our leaders as they're growing as well.
Right.
And Dr. Cantu, is so refreshing. You're a mom, and just hearing, as a mother, not as a superintendent, but as a mother, that she's working this out herself. So for all the parents out there, wherever you are, just grace. Be gracious. We have questions, and we're all worried about it. But we're all working together. Whether it be campus facilities, education, leadership, campus leadership, we're striving for excellence. It may look different now than it was in the past, but we're on that path, and I'm more excited than ever. This might be the most excited I've had in education, as far as engaging my students and showing them things that like I said, that maybe we couldn't do in the same way in the past as well. But grace, innovation, pivot. And let's go get after it.
All right. Well, good last words. I do want to say thank you to our friends online, because you guys have been giving me life. Oh my gosh. We have had so many questions, and I apologize we weren't able to get to all of them, and some of you have been cracking me up. This one says, Dr. Cantu, hire Leon Darden. What an asset. What an asset he would be to MISD. So watch it, DeSoto.
We're going to take a lunch break, and then we'll be back at 1:30.
Right. Yeah. So
but there's so much. So we kids can't get to it all.
Yeah, we had a lot more questions, and I know you guys had questions online. And so thank you guys so much for participating in the program with us. Thank you to our guests. You guys were wonderful, and I echo the sentiments of my husband that you guys are doing an amazing job. I know that it's very difficult to hit a constantly moving target. Everything is constantly changing for you guys, and your passion for our students and for the families is wonderful, and we're thankful for it.
Yes. Thank you guys so much. All of you. Thank you.
And thank you
for this opportunity.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for taking your time. So we are unfortunately out of time. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate all that you're doing for our students and families. Well, Noggin Educational Foundation is the premier sponsor of School Days. So we always want to let you know what's going on with Noggin. If you're listening online, don't jump off just yet. We have a little housekeeping. We want to tell you guys what's going on. At Noggin, our mission is to help close the achievement gap for economically disadvantaged children by improving educational opportunities for students, supporting families, and encouraging excellence and innovation in the classroom. School Days is part of our commitment to support families by providing access to experts who offer information and resources regarding all topics that impact education. If you love this program, please consider donating to Noggin. Your gift will be tax deductible. Head to our website, schooldazedshow.com, to give today. Also, each summer, Noggin hosts our Summer Math and Reading program with the goal of preventing summer learning loss for at-risk students. This year, because of the pandemic, we were able to pivot and serve these students virtually. Although the program looked different this year, we wanted to make sure that each student finished the summer with a brand new book, as they have every year. So for the last 3 weeks, we've been conducting a book drive, and so many of you guys have been so generous, and we're so appreciative of that. If you would like to participate and purchase a book, you can go to our Amazon wish list. If you head to our website, nogginfoundation.com, it's NOGGIN, click on ways to give.
I'm sorry, babe.org. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you. That's nogginfoundation.org, and you can click on ways to give. So, David, we're in the process of planning a show to discuss social emotional learning and intelligence in the light of school closures, online learning, and the pandemic. So last year, we invited Preeti Ahuja, who is the social emotional learning coach at a local school district here in the DFW area, to talk about SEL. And recently, I reached out to her, and she agreed to join us again.
Yes, so SEL, social emotional learning, is understanding and managing emotions and learning how to relate to others, establishing positive relationships, responsible decision making, and which are things we normally practice in the classroom, but are much more challenging to reach and to teach and practice in a virtual environment.
Yeah, so we want to talk about those things, and so be on the lookout for that episode in August. Go to our Facebook page and like it so that you don't miss out on any upcoming information. That's Noggin Educational Foundation. And don't forget to share that with your parent friends. And as always, head to our website, schooldazeshow.com, for more information about all that we're doing and all of the resources that we've mentioned here on School Days. And remember, you don't ever have to miss a show. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, and pretty much anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Noggin Foundation. That's NOGGIN. And last but not least, we always want to end the show by saying that David and I are parenting by grace. We depend on God to give us the wisdom and strength that we need to raise our kids into flourishing adults. And if you would like to know more about that, please feel free to email us at info@schooldazedshow.com. Have a great week and stay safe.